We got Gators breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
Gators breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC, coming at you with a little bit of edge room action right here. Spring football back underway for the Gators after spring break, and hear from a ton of coaches on that Tuesday when the practice started back. We hear from Mike Peterson. He'll lead the way here for this edge group conversation. Later in the week, we will hear from wide receiver coach Billy Gonzalez, running back coach Jabbar Jalouk. So plenty to get into right here on this episode of Gators Breakdown, like there is always, of course, during spring practice. But hey, we will let this episode be dominated by the edge group. Like I said, we'll hear from edge position group coach Mike Peterson. We'll hear from Tyreak Sapp. We'll hear from Gumbs Jr. So those guys have been talking, the last couple of weeks as well. So certainly was waiting for Mike Peterson to talk and kind of just preview the edge room group right here on this episode of Gators Breakdown. And hey, look, it's a group, of course, led by Tyreak Sapp, led by Gumbs. Some depth that we'll get into right here. The storyline kind of kicking off spring practice was LJ McCray moving to Jack. So hey, plenty to get into. Plenty of storylines here. Some early returns on some young guys to get into as well. So everybody, hey, thanks for hopping in right here live. Getting it back right here in the flow of things. Hit that like button. Subscribe right here on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. But smashing that like button really helps us out right here on the YouTube. Gatorville, hey man, thanks for hopping in early right here on this episode of Gators Breakdown, of course. But yeah, thanks for hopping in and joining live, everybody. Wasn't sure exactly what time I was going live, but hey, just piece it together when I can this time of year. So plenty to get into, of course. But before we do, hey, our spring football coverage, of course, is brought to you by Florida Victorious all spring long. And with all the new going on, it's a great time to join. You can be the difference by joining Florida Victorious. Hey, they got some neat stuff going on now with the basketball team, and of course, we heading to the Sweet 16 versus Maryland. All kinds of things that get you involved there with Florida Victorious. You can help them out if, if certain baskets are made, if a player scores so many points or whatever, you can kind of just have that automatically support Florida Victorious. You kind of put in, donate for however many points, overall, how many ever points a player scores, and that goes straight to Florida Victorious. Some fun things going on there, but you can be the difference. Your support can directly impact the outcome of the field as well. Want to help the Gators win? You want a better game day experience? Well, just like when you pack the swamp, your unwavering support through Florida Victorious empowers the Gators to be their best. If you enjoy player access, I know on Thursday there's access on the message board right there. You can have a discussion with Cormani McLean. I know that's the so be on the lookout for that. That's where I was saying the player access right there at Florida Victorious, better than ever before. So members receive invitations to exclusive events, of course, like the meet and greet after the spring game. That was announced as well. We've been hitting it here on Gators Breakdown, of course, but Florida did put out today, of course, that meet and greet after the spring game where you can get player autographs and pictures and all that stuff. That's happening after the spring game. You have to be a Florida Victorious member to get on the field and take part in that. You get access to exclusive merchandise and memorabilia. You get great sports coverage by Nick De La Torre and more. There has never been a better time to join Florida Victorious. So join today and make a difference in bringing victory to the orange and blue. Visit floridavictorious.com to join now. Then, of course, also, if you want to keep that conversation going, Gators Breakdown Plus, get access to that Discord server. Hey, look, it's a fun little chat, fun little room we have during basketball. So, look, I know we don't talk much Gators Breakdown or much basketball on Gators Breakdown, but if you do want to talk basketball, we do it right there on Gators Breakdown Plus. Chat room right there. We had a member chat, voice chat, where 40 minutes of the 20-minute chat was all basketball. And I know some people have said, hey, they would cover basketball on Gators Breakdown. Gators Breakdown has always been football only. Maybe we'll branch out or whatever, but we do talk it right there, Gators Breakdown Plus, if you want to get to it as well. So lots going on right there. But, yeah, that's where you can find some other stuff, what we're doing, what we're talking right there, Gators Breakdown Plus. Oh, David Altman, let's get the comments started, and then we'll head right into what Mike Peterson had to say. But hopefully with a better pass rushing will help the DBs and an even better defense. Yeah, for sure. Much like we saw at the end of the year, which was really, really led by this edge group. Now, of course, some new faces, some guys no longer part of this group. Of course, this it is an edge group that's highly competitive. You got established starters like Tyreek Sapp at the F spot, George Gumbs at the Jack. There's some significant depth, I think, behind them. Cam James is coming along. He's the number 2 option at the F. Remember, he started some games last year. Started at the beginning of the season last year over Tyreek Sapp. So maybe something was going on there in what was happening. But, we know what Tyreek Sapp ended up being as the season went on. Keep staying at that F spot, possibly backed up by a freshman like Jayden Woods. You go to the Jack position, you got some promising newcomers like LJ McCray, who's been moved over to that spot. Kofi Asari, the transfer. Jayden Woods has just been getting rave reviews since he stepped on campus. So, the room features an excellent mix of experience, proven production, high ceiling, potential talent there in that room. I mean, Florida, if it plays out the way you want it to, some versatility, some rotational options, to give Florida some different looks up front. So, Let's hear from position coach Mike Peterson on this edge room.
First of all, they're a tight-knit group, tight-knit. Really, they hang out together, watching film together. Summertime, they was training together. But, yes, I feel really good about my group. Yeah, and we talk about being the best in the country. I ain't afraid to say that. We want to be the best edge group in the country, right? I want to be the best edge coach in the country. It ain't no pressure. That's just kind of how we feel, and that's kind of how we practice it, and that's kind of how we're approaching everything. If you want to be the best, let's go do what the best need to do. First of all, they're a tight-knit group, tight-knit. Really, they hang out together.
Sorry about that. Bring it back. That was going to replay for a second. But, tight-knit group. I mean, that's what you certainly want to hear. Those guys, coming along. And like I said, it's a competitive room. That's what you want. I mean, certainly, I think coming into spring, I wasn't sure. But we know how Florida had to go hit the transfer portal. Jack Pyburn leaves. TJ seriously leaves. So there was a lot of movement in that room. And would I certainly like to have a Jack Pyburn, TJ seriously still in that room, on the roster? Sure I would. Especially Jack Pyburn, who was really playing well at the end of last year as well, giving Florida some deep options in this edge room. But, despite all that, still a tight-knit group. Many guys coming back. Honestly, not many new faces. Kofi Asari, of course, the newest one, and then sliding LJ McCray over, but still part of the team. They know him, so not a whole lot of new faces, and some freshmen. We'll get into that could play some. Of course, it is spring. We got to take what we hear with a grain of salt, especially when it comes to freshmen. It's kind of what you hear this time of year. But we'll get into that conversation, and maybe those guys are out there contributing. But certainly one at the the edge, one at the F, one at the Jack, and I think Florida really likes what they have in Jayden Woods. I mean, you'll hear it. You'll hear it. But a new face that's in the room, a Jayden Woods. I mean. It was from workouts. We'll get into it. You started hearing his name. Billy Napier's talked about him during spring, Ron Roberts and all that. I mean, certainly. But when you hear from Tyreek Sapp and when you hear from George Gumbs, you kind of see where it comes from about this being a tight-knit group, but especially, and we'll get into it here in just a second. I mean, this group is led by Tyreek Sapp. When you hear what he has to say, you can understand why Mike Peterson shares hey, this is a tight-knit group. Because I think it starts with the leadership. I think it starts from the top. It's going to start from a guy like Tyreek Sapp, who's been through a lot in his Gator career and decided to come back. So we're going to talk about how tight-knit this group is. Mike Peterson really likes where this team is. But most importantly, him bringing it up. And maybe it has that potential with Tyreek Sapp. Talking about being the nation's best. These guys want to be the best. I want to be the best. I want to be coaching the nation's best edge room group. That's what Mike Peterson's saying. That starts with Tyreek Sapp. Go back a few weeks ago when I'm talking about returning production. And Tyreek Sapp is the highest graded returning player for Florida and Florida's opponent with a PFF grade of 90.4. Get into a little bit deeper, there were some guys who graded higher than him, but they're no longer coming back. Tyreek Sapp is the highest graded returning PFF grade player for Florida and Florida's opponents. Talking about Florida being the nation's best edge room group, that's what Mike Peterson's talking about right here, starts with Tyreek Sapp. So let's hear even more from Mike Peterson on Tyreek Sapp and Tyreek Sapp himself on why he came back and why no one on defense should wear the number 1 jersey.
Sapp, man, he's one of those guys. He's the first guy I put in my suitcase when I'm traveling. You know, that's kind of how I feel about him. I pack him first. Play with a whole lot of passion, man. You know, as a coach, you know, and if you was a coach and you played that way, I played with a lot of passion, a lot of energy. You know, wanting to get everybody involved, and then to see my players playing that way, and we kind of feed off each other. But I think his growth is learning the game. You know, he's communicating with the young guys. You know, not just knowing what you do, you know, knowing what's the guy on the other side is doing, you know, what all 11 guys on the field are doing, what the opponent's trying to do to us, you know. So taking your game to the next level is kind of the conversations I've been having with him and being a pro. Like now it's time to be a pro. Let's kind of approach everything as a pro. And he's taking it, man. He's taking it and ran with it, and I'm proud of him, and I'm expecting a lot from him. We're not done. It's spring ball. You know what I mean? We're not done. We got some work to do.
I feel good about it, but I know the job ain't finished. Like, it's obviously, I feel like it's a lot of opportunity. A lot of opportunity out there for me to make more plays, and I feel like that's what this year is, and that's what this offseason is. Just me being able to just get a little more off the bone. Yes, I got a whole lot off of it, but I feel like it's always a little bit more. And I know I can improve. I know there's things in my game that I can improve on, that I am going to improve on. Just take it day by day, improve, understand the work, and just like get after it every day with my teammates, and you know, have my coaches take feedback from my coaches and apply it to my game. But you know, it felt good to put that out there. But I know I got a whole lot more in the tank, and it's going to be really exciting to watch me this coming up season. Unfinished business, just like my teammates, those young guys. I couldn't look those young guys in the eyes without, you know, giving them one more time. You know, this program, just everything that it's done for me, you know, I wanted to, you know, pay this program my full service and, you know, just give it everything I got one last time, you know, just so everybody before me and after. So.
Thoughts on the edge room this year and kind of what the potential of your group?
Highly talented. That's one thing I can say. Whole lot of talent, whole lot of youth. So we can use that to our advantage. And then me being a vet, my job is just to bring those guys along, help them understand the sense of urgency that you got to have to be able to play. And you know, obviously getting a hold of the scheme and, you know, try to make it easier for the young guys and not make it overwhelming, and try to kind of bring it down for them and help them understand this is how you do it step by step. So that's just the main thing. You know, the future's bright, but we're just gonna keep on working.
I think you said recently on social media that there's not gonna be any number 1 jerseys on the team.
Yeah.
Can you go into detail why that is a little bit more?
It's simple. Like just like that. Well, me personally, I just feel like that one just breeds a little bit of selfishness. Like it can bring a little bit of entitlement to you, and you just want to keep that energy out by all means necessary. Like you want to almost keep everybody hungry, and like, you know, the number doesn't change anything. Regardless, you got to be that guy on Saturday. That number doesn't make you make any more plays or make any less plays. So you got to understand that. As long as we understand that, we're gonna go out there and be fine, whether somebody wears number 1 or not. So.
Did you guys talk about that as a team? Just want to have that collective mentality that, you know, it's not about the number, it's about us as a group. Yeah, it's about us as a group, especially like defensive wise. That's how we want to play unselfish defense. We got to go out there. We got to play unselfish defense. Everybody got to have each other back, and we all got to trust each other. So you don't want no one to have?
Not even myself.
Do you think people will lobby for it in the fall in terms of wanting to have it?
Yeah, but
it's not going to happen. You're going to make sure it's not going to happen.
We're not getting the green light.
All right.
I'm sure Coach would appreciate that.
Yeah, it's just about us, like, just having that unselfish mentality and, you know, doing it for each other. And it's always, I just want everybody to know, on the only reason I want it, because I want everybody to understand it's bigger than you. Like, no matter everything that we do, it's always bigger than yourself.
Are they agreeing for defense and offense, or just defense?
Offense got their own thing. Like, I don't, like, whatever, like, I don't mind. Like, you wear number one, you wear number one. It is what it is. But, like, as far as defense-wise, like, the Florida Gators defense.
Man, you can tell by those sound bites that Sapp, that's a man on a mission. He's coming back. He is a man on the mission. And he's trying to make sure everybody else is also. So much unselfishness, and Tyreak Sapp has been that way his entire career at Florida. He's had to move all over the defensive line because of depth concerns one year, injury concerns another year, or another time of year. You know, just depth and injury concerns along the front throughout his career, and he's been the one moved around to help make up for those issues. It came together for him last season. Led the team with 7 sacks. 13 tackles for loss while making 47 tackles and 9 starts in 13 games. His 90 PFF grade ranked 3rd among SEC edge defenders and 9th in FBS. So it was 3rd ranked, as I said. He was only behind Princey Umanmielen and Jared Ivey, both of Ole Miss. So with those guys gone, Sapp is the highest graded returning player for Florida and Florida's 2025 opponents. He played 416 snaps and graded in the top 5 among U.S. defenders in 9 games. Posted 26 quarterback pressures, 29 defensive stops. He was elected to return for his senior season, redshirt senior season, of course. Not entering the 2025 NFL draft after this breakout campaign. Just on a tear, especially at the end of the season. And that defense was playing well. Tyreek Sapp ended up starting up front with a big reason why. Of course, going to resume his starting role at this F spot. Just blossomed, since switching from kind of the more, he played interior defensive line, played all along the defensive line, but found a home in that F spot and just kind of blossomed as the season went along. Look, I commend Sapp for coming back. He could have left early, for sure. He could have went to the draft, but as he said, and I do believe there is another step for him. You heard him say it as well. And that's scary because he was so good last season. But I love his take and him showing that he is a true Gator by wanting to come back and lead this team, lead his teammates, lead this defense. Sapp's always been that unselfish guy. And now every time you hear him talk, he shares that emotion as well. Tyreek Sapp's a guy you want to have in that foxhole with you. And look, I'm kind of glad, with the way that those sound bites ended there, it kind of just shows the unselfishness. I've never really been a big number guy either. Not hold number one, just I don't really care. It's always been way overblown to me, way too much importance put on it. I know many of you out there are, take a lot from it. I know Billy Napier doesn't take a whole lot from it as well. It just never has really mattered to me. As Sapp said, it's not going to make you play any different. So I'm glad to see a player of Sapp's stature agree. Granted, like I said, it shouldn't have an effect either way. Just go play some ball. Just go play ball. Justice Boone had the number last season. Just might be the last one for at least the season. We'll see if anything changes from between here and when the season starts. But certainly it's not a big deal to me. I don't care if anybody wears it or not. But as you heard Tyreek Sapp say, hey, look, we're just not going to have that selfishness on our team. No. Offense, hey, they can do what they want to do. He says it is different. It is, and we all know it is. Maybe this is not the right word for it, but when you go look at offense, you kind of think of, the diva side of things. Okay, whatever. For Tyreek Sapp, he don't care. He goes, my side of the ball, no. I'm a team leader. This is how I want to do it. This is what we're going to do. So, yeah. No, we don't need to. And casual Carolina fishing does bring up a good point. I had never heard the guy wearing number 1 was a top player thing until Urban. That's true. That's true. I always assumed it was just an Urban thing. That just kind of definitely is when it blew up. Definitely kind of just when it blew up. Let's see. Sean says, hey, Dave, Gator Sean, probably been a Gator before you were born. I enjoy your podcast. I've been subscribed for a while. Really excited about this defense and team overall this year. Yeah, Sean, me too, man. Hey, look, we're going to get into it as well. I probably should have previewed this at the beginning of the episode and what Paul Feinbaum had to say. You know, a polarizing figure. You know, I don't. It's not that I take what Paul Feinbaum says to heart, but and I know many people out there don't either. But it is polarizing. It gets people talking, and that's at the base. That's really what it is. But it got really. He was on Andy and Ari on 3 podcast. Of course, he picked Florida to have that 4-game losing streak at some point this year. We'll get into it. We'll get into it here before we sign off in this episode of Gators Breakdown. But you know, besides that, Sean, yeah, I'm excited about it too. I'm excited about this defense and taking another step, taking off from where they ended last season. You know, we just need to see more of that. We need to see more of that from the get-go. We need to see more of that from the beginning of the season. Tyreek Sapp's going to be a big, big part of that. Big part of that. Well, it's going to be another player. I think a big part of that. I think Florida's got a really good 1-2 punch at this edge group. Sapp in that F, strong side defensive end edge spot, and then on that other side, the jack spot, the stand-up outside linebacker, a guy who it took some time, but we knew it was going to take some time just because of the adjustment, and that's George Gumbs Jr. And what a fun player he was. A fun player he was to watch progress last year. I enjoyed hearing him on the microphone. I think he's pretty lively on the microphone. So go listen to the after this episode of Gators Breakdown now. Go listen to the full interview with George Gumbs Jr. He's pretty entertaining himself. You can tell he's getting comfortable. We all loved, and he even said it in that interview, about that flag planting in Tallahassee last year. He's the first one out there at midfield, planting that Gator flag right in the middle of Ron Zook Field. George Gumbs, he's become a fan favorite. He became an instant fan favorite as soon as he planted that flag right there in the middle of that garnet and gold. Florida goes to Tallahassee, gets their 3rd straight win there at the end of the season. And George Gumbs Jr., not only just because of that, but he was playing well at the same time. So let's hear from Mike Peterson on George Gumbs Jr. and Gumbs Jr. himself on his game, LJ McCray, and going against this Florida offensive line.
He got a great story, man. You know what I mean? I know everybody here knows his story, man, but coming in, he was super raw. You know what I mean? We look at some film in the meeting room. We're looking at film from last year, and this time last year, we kind of go back and look at things and to see where his game has went. We used to tease him and nickname, give him all kind of nicknames. I think the first day he lined up on the edge, he lined up like a receiver. You know what I mean? Hey, man, what are you doing? So his game is he's like a sponge. That's what I like. Anything I tell him, he's soaking it in. And I see him go out and try to work on it. And then he did that last year, and then he had some success. And then the eyes got really big and like, oh, I can play this position. I can do this, And he's grown up a lot as far as the leadership role. He's not, when he got here, he wasn't really a big vocal guy. He was a kind of, I'm just going to work. And the players, they kind of noticed that, and he got a lot of respect from his players, got a lot of respect from the coaches, everybody in this building, just off the way he worked. Okay, now it's time to, let's hear some of that. Let's speak. Let's grab some of these young guys, and lead the way. So I'm proud of him, man. You know what I mean? Somebody told me the other day, they said, man, Gumbs is kind of saying the same words you say, just kind of same mannerism. So that make you proud as a coach. I hope it's all good, but I'm excited about Gumbs.
I've just been trying to find little things in my game to critique. I feel like, I'm not there yet. So, it's just always a chance to get better. Just critiquing myself is the best I can, just see what I can do better. I feel like it's a lot of things in my game that I could do better. Just like if we really gonna go there, just my footwork, better hand placement. Just adding things to my pass rush and to the run. I feel like I'm a person that could develop and evolve and change to my surroundings very well. Like going from receiver to tight end to DN to new school, new system. It's just and then I was watching some of my old spring ball clips. I feel like, okay, dang, it's kind of hard to damn, that was me. okay. But like I feel like just taking big jumps and just always taking coaching, like never getting too much of a big head, and like just I never feel like no matter how good people may say I am, I never feel like okay, I'm that. It's always something I could do better. I'm very comfortable, you know. Like I feel like I know the system really well, so like I could just be me and do my thing, you know.
Are you taking more of a leadership role?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Like, especially like with this being my last year, I'm trying to take like the younger guys and like show like how a vet taught me, like, okay, this is how I train, this is how I hit the cold tub, and this is what I do, this is how I watch my film. So like they'll have like a little platform before I leave.
LJ McCray, excuse me. Is he going to make a soft like that year 2 leap? You always hear about. Do you expect that from him?
Yeah, I expect that from him. You know, last year I feel like he got a good chance to get the game speed of everything. Just now it's year 2 for him, so like I feel like he's putting in the work and it's showing in practice too.
What does he bring to the table?
What does he bring? I mean, everything, you know. I feel like just working on being a complete edge, you know, being able to stop the run and be able to pass rush as well.
What's the transition like going from F to Jack, and what are some of the difficulties of playing outside linebacker?
It's pretty. To me, it's not that hard, you know. F and Jack, it's just for some plays like. The only thing you're taking out is like not playing forward and being able to drop in coverage a little bit. Like, but like once you be able to understand like the basis of our drops and stuff, it's pretty good to understand. Like I got him under me a lot, so he's learning under me, and I feel like he's taking everything pretty well.
Is he athletic enough to drop in the coverage?
No doubt, he's an athlete. Like just because like he's what 6'7", 270, yeah, he's big, but like he can move. Like in our little workouts, that's the guy I'm running with. He can move. I feel like we got a pretty good O-line, you know. Me going out there is like iron sharpening iron, you know. It's like I'll be making a fool of myself or like not being a good teammate if I don't go out there and give my best. And like I feel like in order to make a great play, I had to give it all I got with them, you know.
You matched up with the most?
I'll probably say Austin Barb. Yeah, Austin Barb. I'll go get him pretty nice amount.
What's that chess match like in practice?
It's pretty good, you know. He's a crafty guy, so you know. I gotta think sometimes, I'm finna beat him, and you know, sometimes just throw a lot of power into it, and you know, I like the result after that.
There we go. Like I said, you get a little bit of hint of it right there with George Gumbs, the kind of personality that he brings. I kind of see why he's a little magnet right there. Like I said, it was a fun conversation. I can only share about 3 minutes of it, you know, for, you know, if we do it right in the regulations Florida puts, I don't blame them. You know, they want people going to their sites and get the full interviews and stuff. But, you know, I'm going to follow the rules there, but for George Gumbs, of course, you know, from Chicago, of course, his journey a little unconventional, 253 pounds. I mean, made a really good transition from, wide receiver to tight end, and he comes to Florida, and now he's an edge player, and you transfer from Northern Illinois ahead of last season, and I didn't think much of it, honestly. So good on this staff for identifying his athleticism, his potential, to be what he ended up being toward the end of last year. He really came on, and he needed to, of course, to maybe show the staff. Now, maybe it doesn't play out the same way if he doesn't come along, but by the end of the year, you had a George Gumbs, and you had Jack Pyburn, and you had TJ Searcy, all of these guys at the same spot, and we all know what ended up happening. And I'll go to a comment here in just a second that we're talking in the YouTube chat. Yeah, but certainly him coming along, it made it hard for Florida to keep 3 guys that were going to be at that spot because of what probably unpredictability of what George Gumbs was able to put together. So defensive coordinator Ron Roberts sees an even greater potential ahead. He said earlier this spring, quote, his best football is way ahead of him, he says to George Gumbs. I expect him to be an impact player this year. He's going to be a vital weapon. Obviously, he needs to step up and be more impactful on third down. So you heard George Gumbs right there say what he wants to get better at. Ron Roberts throwing some more in there too. Be more impactful on third down. He was an impact player, but we want him to be more of an impact in how he uses his tools. So, of course, the stats right there for George Gumbs. Going to back it up. In his first season with the Gators, appeared in all 13 games, had 3 starts, finishing second on the team in both tackles for loss with 8 and sacks. So, as I said, didn't only have 3 starts, but was still second on the team in tackles for loss and second on the team in sacks. So, as I said, with that production and pairing that with what Jack Pyburn was doing, what TJ Searcy was doing, there was no way Florida was going to keep all 3 of those guys. Jack Pyburn decides to go to LSU. Searcy goes to Texas A&M. 35 tackles for Gumbs, 20 solo stops, 4 quarterback hurries, 2 pass breakups, and a fumble recovery. So Pyburn to LSU, Searcy to A&M, of course, via the transfer portal. Now Gumbs has to be more of a leader. You heard that topic discussed. So expand his role on the team. His mentality, you won't question that. That should become contagious, as you heard Mike Peterson say, in this tight-knit room. Ron Roberts noted, quote, his best things I can tell you in our turnaround is guys like him and feeding their effort and their mentality to play the game. And a lot of our players can feed off of that, in the quote. So I want to go back to a comment, and we discussed it. You would have got this conversation a couple days ago on Gators Breakdown Plus in the chat that we had there. But I'll copy and paste right here in this episode of Gators Breakdown. Let me go back and find the comment from Sean. Sean McCook says, it's really sad that Jack Pyburn grew up a Gator fan and left us for LSU. Sean, we had this exact conversation on Gators Breakdown Plus the other day. And it came up from when the conversations about transfer portal and guys transferring. Lewis Murphy was on High Top last week or the week before that. Good interview with those guys. And he was talking about Trevor Etienne at Florida and then going to Georgia and talking about Florida-Georgia rivalry. And you can't have players going from Florida to Georgia, which I completely agree with. I don't want to see that, but we've had our share of Brenton Cox and coming to Florida, and Jalen Kimber leaving Georgia and coming to Florida. So it went both ways. But Trevor Etienne was an impact player, of course. But I think when you zoom out and look big picture a bit, it's guys like Jack Pyburn, to me, that hurt more. This is a guy, as you said, Sean, grew up in Jacksonville, grew up going down to Gainesville and going to games, cheering for the orange and blue, more than likely in his bedroom some Gator memorabilia, Gator stuff on his walls. Was underrated prospect. I think Auburn was the only other SEC program really giving him a heavy look. Florida comes in late with Billy Napier and makes this dream come true. And he transfers out a few years later. That's the angle of the transfer portal that's more hard for me to grasp, more hard for me to swallow, of guys that I mean, people will say, oh, he's not a true Gator. Well, at one time he was. He grew up a Gator. He was like you and I out there cheering for the Gators. And then in this new world of college football, you see a guy like that go to we just talked about Etienne going to Georgia. Now, that's our biggest rival. But LSU ain't far behind for many people. And it's a team that's on Florida's schedule. And as we're talking about the edge group here, that is a big piece of it, is Jack Pyburn leaving Florida, growing up a Gator fan, and going to LSU. That is the new world of college football. But it's guys like that that's harder for me to swallow than a Trevor Etienne leaving Florida and going to Georgia. Now, you can look at it, it's 2 different ways. It's one, going to your biggest rival, and one, being a fan of the school he went to and then leaving anyway. So it's a different situation. Don't like either one of them. but yeah, that's the ugly side of this to me. Now, for Pyburn, okay, good. You're free to do whatever you want to do. And look, I'm money sign and dollar signs certainly play a part in all this. And like we said, Florida's deep here. Florida wasn't going to spend and pay 3 guys at one position. That's the world of college football we're in right now. So Jack Pyburn decides to leave. This new world of college football. But that's I don't like it either, man. I don't like it either. L. Wolf says, and it turned out this way for Pyburn. He was a developmental player, that played better than expected. Yeah, I mean, he got injured in 23, fought hard, came back, and was part. I'm not, just because he left, I'm not going to shy away from what Jack Pyburn was for this defense. He was playing well. But in this new world of college football, at a position where you're going to rotate a lot of bodies, I mean, we saw it toward the end of last year. Gumbs was getting a lot of snaps. Pyburn was getting snaps. Searcy was getting snaps. If you bring all three of those guys, throw out the money aspect of it. I don't blame Jack Pyburn for wanting to play more. I don't. But you would hope, being a fan, being a Gator, could keep him around a little bit more. And maybe it's, Searcy leaving, but you still have Gumbs and Searcy there, or Gumbs and Pyburn there. Not the way it played out. So that's just the weird side of it all for me. All right, let's keep it going here, guys. And you heard Gumbs discuss LJ McCray's move to Jack, and we discussed it earlier this spring. We've hit on it a pretty good bit here, so we're not going to spend too much time on it. But Mike Peterson, of course, was asked about it as well. And Peterson said that he teased McCrae about moving to Jack at the end of last season, and McCrae responded with, quote, "Coach, whatever you need me to do." End the quote. Peterson described him as, quote, "very athletic and can do a lot of things, competitive." And offseason was about changing his body as well. And commit to the weight room and commit to the eating habits. And that's exactly what he did. Said everyone knows about LJ and that he coaches him hard. And Peterson was then asked about LJ's bodybuilding, being that 6'6", 270 type of frame that can just move around. And Peterson said he didn't want to put him in the same category. But Peterson played with a guy, and we called him the freak because of his size. But Peterson played with Javon Curse. He said he didn't want to put him in that same category. But he is familiar with guys that can run and lift at that size. But LJ McCray isn't there yet. But he's working hard. All right, let's get to some more players here at this edge spot. Now let's go to the player who started the first 4 games at the F position before Tyreek Sapp took over, one Cam James. He recorded 25 tackles, 17 being solo. He had 3 tackles for loss, 1 forced fumble, 6 quarterback hurries, and 13 appearances across 360 snaps. Scored his first career sack in the bowl game against Tulane. Of course, made a pretty impressive jump from his freshman year. He only had 4 tackles. And then last year had 28. He had 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. There's 16 pressures I mentioned. Against LSU, he saw action in that defensive end with 1 solo tackle, his first sack of the season there against LSU for a 7-yard loss. Also notched 2 quarterback hurries. At FSU, totaled 3 tackles, all of them solo, 1 tackle for loss, and a forced fumble in that road win. The Gasparilla Bowl versus Tulane, he saw action at defensive end, racking up 3 tackles and a sack. 6'6", 267 pounds, puts him right there on the interior, that strong side defensive end spot there with Tyreek Sapp. Backing up Tyreek Sapp, hopefully. Not much of a drop-off this year. Will continue. He's going to be heavily involved. He's going to be getting a ton of snaps as well. Tyreek Sapp wasn't very high. When I took those top 20 players, when I was looking at in returning production, Tyreek Sapp, I think, was like 11th overall in the defense. Cam James, they were splitting snaps, playing a lot with each other. And that's, I think, probably one reason Tyreek Sapp was able to put together the havoc he was, they were able to take him off the field, keep him fresh, and have Cam James there to back him up. Peterson discusses freshman Jayden Woods as well in his press conference. And Jayden Woods has just been a player that's name has just been blowing up as a freshman. From offseason workouts to early spring ball, Mike Peterson says he's not surprised by the early play of Woods. Said that he's seen the same things from him that he saw in his high school tape. A quiet kid, but locked in demeanor. Quote, he's been great, heavy-handed, can really rush the passer, a great kid. This follows what we've heard all spring long about Jayden Woods. And of course, I had an article a couple weeks ago on gatorsbreakdown.com about the early hype so far. And remember, Woods flipped from Penn State last fall. It was a big victory for Florida in making that big run at the end of the last class. Look, it's already paying dividends for the Gators. I mean, the impact has been immediate, exceeding early expectations and coaches and teammates. Billy Napier, earlier, a few weeks ago, he shares insight as to why the young defender has adapted so quickly to the college level. The physical tools were evident to Napier. Quote, I think he's 6'3", probably 235, played stack backer a little bit as a senior, but really fundamentally advanced. I think he's been coached well, played in a good program. Dad was a former player at Kansas State. There's a lot there. Grandfather very involved, just a blue-collar family. And the guy who has the DNA to play early in terms of he came in here a little bit more advanced. That's from the head coach himself just a couple of weeks ago. I don't think this one's going to be lip service. I think Jayden Woods is going to be on the field a good bit for this Florida defense. Now, of course, there's some guys, there's going to be some guys in front of him. But he's going to be a young player that I don't think Florida's going to be afraid to play. Has some advanced preparation that was evident before spring training camp began, with Napier noting that Woods had already emerged as a standout during Florida's offseason workout regimen. Let's go back to his high school. Shawnee Mill Valley, 212 total tackles, 101 of them being solo, 25.5 tackles for loss, 18.5 sacks, all other kind of achievements there. When you watch him, if you watch that film, you go back and look at him, he has the ability to bend around offensive tackles, a low pad level, various effective pass rush moves. They moved him around a bit, he said. Played some more backer last year as well. Coaching staff, the enthusiasm was there. Tyreak Sapp, teammates say it as well. He says the kid's a hard worker. He has extreme work ethic, catches on quick. He understands the techniques. He's a unique guy. He applies it to his game, and he's going to be good in the future. Ron Roberts kept saying some stuff as well. Echoed these sentiments. Great human being, tremendous effort, very intelligent, high motor, all the intangibles you could ask for in a player. We've got it. There you go. High praise for Jayden Woods. One player that I'm certainly eager to see. Eager to see in the spring game. Eager to keep hearing about, hopefully, the next couple of weeks before the spring game. But when that first game rolls around and Florida's playing Long Island, well, because of the opponent, won't be surprised if we see a player like Jayden Woods early. Won't be surprised if we see a player like Jayden Woods playing a ton of snaps. Now, of course, we know we can get in trouble in spring football. Spring lies, you heard me and Will talk about it last week. But if I had to predict, I don't think this one's going to be one. Think so. Oh, let's see. It looks like I got some lag going on, so hopefully not. Hopefully not. That might be something with a new setup, but we'll see. We'll see. Let's see. Keep going. We've had Tyreek Sapp. Oh, sorry. Little nose itch. Tyreek Sapp, George Gumbs, LJ McCray, Woods. They've been the story so far in this spring with the edge room, understandably so. A lot more here in this edge room, of course. Justice Boone left. We've already talked about Jack Pyburn leaving, TJ Searcy leaving. I mean, there's just some guys, of course, that the big names at the position that are no longer on the roster. So Peterson, let's keep it with the freshmen right quick. Before we sign off here on this episode of Gators Breakdown, he went on to say about freshman Jayden Wiggins, quote, he's a Gator. By committing early to Florida, sticking with Florida through all the bad times, he is a Gator. He's a hard worker, another one that isn't speaking a lot right now, but Joe, when you have guys like Sapp and Cam James around, there's not much opportunity to speak. So, hey, look, and I know that about Tyreek Sapp. And look, you go and if you look at a lot of those videos Florida would put out of game highlights after and just show the locker room, Tyreek Sapp's that guy. And you want Tyreek Sapp to be that guy. So, yeah, there may not be a whole lot of speaking from hey, look, these young guys are going to learn. They're going to learn from guys like Sapp and Cam James and George Gumbs. So not much opportunity right now. So let's not forget about transfer Kofi Asari. Can he be the next George Gumbs? You know, guy who, small school, got the physique that, you know, if he steps off the bus, you're like, yeah, that's a football player. That's what I want my football players to look like. Can he be the next George Gumbs? Peterson mentioned for Asari, quote, he can really run and a great teammate. Coming in as a transfer, you know, he just had to fit in, and that has come along just fine, putting in the extra work after practice to get better. So Kofi Asari, I mean, you know, that's where, you know, Florida did need to hit the transfer portal with as many departures as they had in this edge room. I know many would have loved a more established name, and I think that's where I go and say, hey, can he be the next type of, you know, unheralded, coming from a lower school? You probably won't see it to begin with in the season of 2025. But we get toward the end of the season, and he's a lot like George Gumbs, where his name's being called more, and he's making bigger plays. And then keeping it with this room. Let's not forget what Billy Napier said on Gators Breakdown back in February. That you could also see players like Pup Howard and Aaron Childs contribute at the edge spot. So can't let that go. He said it right here on the podcast. I think he's mentioned it in spring too. Toward the beginning of spring, I think the opening spring press conference, I think it may have been brought up then. But it wasn't too long ago. We were talking about this position group right here on Gators Breakdown, and Billy Napier just, you know, willingly throwing out two names that you could see. So, certain situations, certain down and distance situations, maybe if guys are injured a bit, and you can see guys, you know, you want to be prepared. But with the depth chart we just went through here on this episode, I don't necessarily know if you need those guys there. So if you see those guys there, could be Florida being very creative. Could be Florida having multiple pass rushers. I mean, I remember when the defense started playing better and you started looking at some of the changes they made after the first bye week, Florida would bring on like a Sapp and a Pyburn and Cam James all in together. You'd have throw TJ Searcy in there in some kind of combo as well. When you knew it was going to be a pass from the opposing team, Florida would just bring their best pass rushers on the field. So when you talk about when you see the names that we just discussed this whole episode, and you throw in other names like Howard and Childs, and maybe lining those guys up at that outside linebacker spot as well, might see Florida be pretty creative here. Sean McCook, one more thing. Dave, have you heard anything new about spring practice this week? So yesterday was the first one, so of course had not much going on. DJ Lagway still did not throw. Coming back from spring break, Aiden Warner was getting more of the first team reps there instead of Harrison Bailey. I don't know if there's much to that. If I'll ask around, but to me, I think it's just more of a rotation thing, getting first team reps for, I think, what would be your two main quarterbacks right now. Let's see. D.D. Johnson was back out there. So, yeah, Bryce Thornton was back out at practice as well. I'm trying to go from the top of my head here, as you can tell. Let's see. Anything else stand out? Tyreak Sapp had a great day. Probably should have mentioned that since we talked about Tyreak Sapp this episode. I heard he had a great day on Tuesday coming back from spring practice. Some of these notes from Nick De La Torre, I won't share them all because he shares them there at Florida Victorious. So kind of a tease of what you can get there from Nick, and we kind of pair up here with Florida Victorious. Defense had a great day coming back from the first day of spring break. First practice, defense led the way. So, hey, look, probably going to be a trend for me with what is happening at the right position for Florida this spring. So, no really cause for concern for me in that regard here in the defense. Probably leading the way. But that's all I'll share right now. Right now. But there's some key players coming back, of course. Getting those guys out there. Lagonze Hayward also lining up at nickel. So not much of a surprise. We've discussed that in the first couple of weeks of the injuries Florida's facing in that defensive secondary. So Hayward's name was brought up as an option there at the nickel spot. All right, let's get into it right quick. As I've mentioned, kind of teased earlier, let's just because it's out there a lot. Hey, look, and I knew people would want to see it. They're going to read it just because it's Feinbaum. And a lot of people down Feinbaum, but he's polarizing. Whether you agree or disagree, he's going to get an opinion out of you. His opinion gets other people's opinion. I don't put much stock into what Paul Feinbaum says. But he's a polarizing figure. He gets people riled up, as we know, especially if you're an Alabama and Auburn fan. But he's not buying. And I put this article up on gatorsbreakdown.com today. So I'll go share much of what I put up there on that. He's not buying Florida's momentum heading into the 2025 season, despite that strong finish in 2024. During a recent appearance on Andy and Ari on On 3, Feinbaum made waves with a bold prediction about the Gators' challenging early season schedule. Let's not forget that 4-game stretch for Florida starts from September 13th to October 11th, where Florida will face LSU, Miami, Texas, and Texas A&M. There's a bye week in there as well. So when discussing this gauntlet of games and head coach Billy Napier, Feinbaum didn't mince words, stating bluntly, quote, not even a big statement to say he should lose all 4. So, kind of a prediction there for, he didn't say could lose all 4. He said should lose all 4. And, people are feeling better about Florida this year. Florida's not going 0-4 in that stretch. I'd be absolutely shocked. Florida goes 0-4 in that. But there is a but, and you guys know me. I like to share both sides of the story, so you can kind of make your own opinion. Now, I don't think Feinbaum's going this deep in it. But where I could say where Florida would struggle in that, 3 of those are road games. And we know Florida struggles under Billy Napier in road games. He doesn't have a great big road win yet. First season, his biggest win on the road, probably Texas A&M, weren't really all that good that year. His second season, that come from behind miracle victory at South Carolina, not a great South Carolina team. Last year, now you had to have it. You couldn't lose it. But you had to beat Florida State on the road. You know, the Ole Miss game, the LSU game, at home, Florida's biggest wins of the season when they were at home. So, of course, hasn't been great on the road. No big-time victories on the road. LSU's on the road. Miami's on the road. A&M on the road. Texas, in that 4-game stretch, is the only team coming to the Swamp. So if you want to say it should happen, it's probably because of something like that. Can you go beat LSU on the road? Can you go beat Miami on the road? Can you go beat Texas A&M on the road? And then Texas is going to be one of the better teams in the country, and they're coming to the Swamp. So could it happen? Sure. Should it happen? Absolutely not. This team is headed in the right direction. You don't go 0-4 in that stretch. I don't think Florida will go 0-4 in that stretch. So, you know, it was a noticeable quote from the SEC's loudest voice. There were Paul Feinbaum. So certainly just needed to be discussed. I don't put much stock in it, but certainly a topic worth, I think, bringing up. Not saying you have to believe him. I don't even believe him. But it is what it is. Chase Wester right here as we're talking to Edge Group. This will be the last comment. Any word on McCrae this spring? Turning up a level from what you've heard, Dave. We need him to grow up quick. Discussed a little bit. We heard from George Gumbs talking about him, casual Carolina fishing. Throws that comment in there. We discussed McCrae earlier, of course, as well this spring when that move was made, of course. Some practices have happened. But hearing what Mike Peterson has to say, George Gumbs has to say, just how athletic he is. And I remember talking to Jacob LaFrance last year. It was about this time a year ago. And just how they just raved about his athleticism and his size and that combo. And he can rush the passer if they need him to rush the passer. He can set the edge if they need him to set the edge. And that's what his job is going to be at this edge spot. So haven't heard a ton about how it's coming along, that move to Jack. It's going to be an adjustment, of course, but I think just because of his athleticism, he's going to be okay. Now, I think the mental aspect of it, of dropping into coverage, the athletic part of dropping into coverage, can he be comfortable doing that? He can have all the athleticism in the world to be able to do that. Will he be comfortable in doing that role in this spot? So, that's things I think we have to look out for. Things he has to adjust to. Things he has to be comfortable mentally doing. I think physically he'll be okay in doing that. But there's other things I think we probably should ask about with LJ McCray in playing that jack spot. Thanks for the comment, Chase. All right, everybody. Hey, one more time, thanks for hopping in right here on this episode of Gators Breakdown. Spring practice coverage. Edge Room group here, as I said, coming up will probably be a lot of what you guys want to hear. Wide receiver. Probably the most... maybe the most discussed position group so far. Because of Trey Wilson, J. Michael Sturdivant, and then, of course, your freshman, Vernell Brown III, Dallas Wilson. A lot to discuss there. Billy Gonzalez speaks, so we'll hear from him on that. And Jabbar Jaluk, running backs coach in that deep running back room, led by Jaden Ball, Jacoby Jackson. Hey, man, plenty to get into. Right here, spring practice on Gators Breakdown. That'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for joining me on this episode of Gators Breakdown.